Yes, Bob Sullivan and the company is InfoPro. We're located down in Cuyahoga Falls. We've been involved really in the whole sales and marketing side of the world for the last 28 years. And pass it on.
I'm Gianfagna, rhymes with lasagna, very difficult name. And I own a company called Gianfagna Strategic Marketing Incorporated. I created the firm about 26 years ago here in Cleveland. We do marketing strategy and creative services, so we generally help companies figure out how to tell their story more effectively and how to use their marketing resources more effectively. So we do a lot of marketing audits, marketing planning, marketing strategy, and then we fully execute whatever we recommend to our clients.
Beautiful. Which is something that's so important, because often what we find is that companies think, I need to do marketing, right? And they just run. They just go for it without thinking about it.
Or they jump straight to tactics. They don't
Sure.
think about strategy. And so much of what they need to think about and plan for is the strategic point. You know, why are you doing this? What's the point? Who are you trying to reach?
Right.
What are their thoughts? What are their concerns? You know, what are their needs? How do you solve those problems? What's the best way to address those needs? So, and what's the best way to deliver those messages? And a lot of times it's through a data-driven marketing program. So
Absolutely.
that's why a CRM system is so important.
So before we talk about that in detail, why don't we start with like the basic? What is a CRM? Why does it matter for sales, and why does it matter for marketing?
Okay. You should find that.
Okay.
That's your
Really, in terms of a CRM, you know, so many organizations that I see now are still trying to run their operation on Excel spreadsheets. And you just can't really do that. You need a place of taking all these various data silos, Excel spreadsheets, and put it in one place. And the real objective here is to have one view of that relationship. Because it's not only now, when we talk about, you know, CRM used to be called customer relationship management. That term has gone away and been replaced by really customer engagement. Because you're engaging your customer not only at the sales side, the marketing side, but the service side, maybe the field service side, in terms of support. How do you keep track of all those touches? How do you keep track of all those places on the journey that a person's going through from the point of really acquisition through retention? That's what a CRM system needs to do, to give you that one view of the relationship, that one truth of the relationship. So that's why you need to have that.
Sounds complicated.
Break down those silos.
Sure. Sounds like it could be complicated though to get started with something like knowing what these silos are, or know how to use a CRM system to be advantageous and not just another thing to worry about. How would you recommend somebody starts with CRM marketing or using CRM in general?
It's not so complicated in terms of the actual technology. The technology is the easy part of it. Really, in this effort, technology only amounts to being about 20% of the issues. It's the process, the strategy, the behaviors you're trying to change. And the biggest issue is getting organizations, departments to start talking to each other and start having those conversations that start talking about alignment.
That's right. I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the organizations that we see have CRM systems. A lot of companies have invested in CRM, but they get it and then they don't know what to do with it. And they haven't figured out why they got it in the first place.
Yep.
They got one because someone said, well, you have to have a CRM system. So they get one, and then they don't really know what to do with it. And then they make a lot of big mistakes. We see a lot of very common mistakes that people make with CRM. And we see lots of folks who don't really know how to use the CRM system to really engage fully with their customers. I mean, they aren't capturing the right data, they're not using the data correctly, they're not using it to change the behavior of their own team, their own sales force. So there's a lot of strategy involved in using a CRM system, but like Bob was saying, the technology isn't actually that complicated. In fact, it's probably getting simpler and simpler as technology is in most areas of life. The more there is, the easier it gets to use it. But once you have it, you have to really think about why you have it and how you want to use it to impact your sales.
Sure. So it kind of sounds like, to round it back to what we were saying before, people just start marketing without thinking about why or how or what they're doing. They go right to those tactics.
Right.
In CRM, you're seeing people just getting a tool. It might not be the right tool. It might not be the right activities that are being done once that tool's in place, because they've never thought about that.
Right.
Yeah, they'll just install it often and just think that the first part of it is just fill it with data, and then everybody else will figure it out on their own.
Or they'll do that, and then they'll say, let's pull an email list, and we'll do an email blast to all the customers or prospects in category whatever. That's fine, but that's just one very small tactic. And before you actually do that, you need to understand who exactly you want to target and why those people, and what's their behavior been, and how are they interacting with you now. How are you interacting with them? And that's what the CRM system gives you the ability to do.
Sure.
And so often, I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing it too, that they're not segmenting their lists.
Right.
They're not doing anything in terms of what kind of customers do we have. They may not even have appended the basic demographic information to know how to start the segment. You know, who is their best customer? You know, who falls in the group B that they want to be talking to that might become best customers? They don't have that kind of information to start sharing it to understand that.
Exactly.
So is that term dirty data, like make sure your data in your database or your CRM system is clean? Would it be
Big
because
part of
they're
it.
not
Big
thinking
part of
about
it.
it?
A lot of organizations though have so many duplicates and so much information that when they start a CRM system, they may be pulling a base file from their ERP system. These are people who purchase from us. Well, that doesn't tell them who the decision makers were. I mean, in any kind of process now, we know that there's at least 5 to 6 people that are involved in the decision-making process. They probably have in their ERP system who they built.
Right.
And they're missing the other pieces of the information, and they don't have the prospects. And then they don't know what kind of organization they really are. I mean, we may sell to a manufacturing organization, but do we know their size? Do we know whether they sell through distributors? Do we know how many times they're going to trade shows? They don't think about that information and start collecting it, so they start segmenting their data for, let's find people like that and go after them.
Exactly. Very true. And sometimes when we talk about dirty data, we're talking about data that hasn't been properly entered or properly maintained. I mean, one of the crucial aspects of a CRM system is setting up the protocols for entering and managing the data once it's in there. And many companies don't do it right. You'd be amazed at the databases that I see with my clients and Bob sees with his clients, where you get the data and you've got all kinds of stuff in a field that's supposed to be first name, right? And it's instead of just first name, it's Mr. So-and-so, first name, last name, appendix, like, or suffix, I should say, junior. It's a mess. And because you have it like that, and because you haven't properly categorized it, properly entered it, properly managed it, it's impossible to turn that into any kind of a clean list that you can actually work with, either for direct contact or for analysis. I mean, it's really impossible.
Every campaign, whether it's a direct mail piece or an email piece, becomes a Chinese fire drill. Let's go out and look at every record, figure it out again, who should go in it.
Yeah.
And that just is too much of a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of defeats the purpose, perhaps, of creating this system in the first place. If every time you need to do something, you're starting from, in essence, from scratch.
Right, right.
So with that in mind, what are a couple things that, as a company rolls out a new CRM or a new technology like that, what are a few things that they can do to set themselves up for success from square one?
Good.
The very first one is define, as Jean was mentioning, why they have a CRM system. What is their expectations of why they have this system, and break it into spaces. Don't try to chew everything off at once. What are we trying to achieve with this tool, in the next 90 days? How can we measure that, and how are we going to get there? Because it's when they turn these into these huge projects of trying to do everything at once that they get bogged down and frustrated and drop out of the effort.
Absolutely. Another crucial thing I think is an essential early step is really doing a pretty thorough analysis of your customers. You want to determine who your customers are. How large are these companies? Who are these companies? Who's the buyer? Who's the influencer? Who signs off on the purchase order? How big of an order did they place? How often do they buy from you? What's their value to you? You actually can use calculations, and Bob is an expert at this, at calculating customer lifetime value and even projecting a customer's lifetime value, if you do it properly and if you have the data to start with, transactional data, behavioral data. So it's using that data to really understand who your customers are and then segment them into groups, not just like all the pharmacy management companies I want to reach in Iowa. I mean, you could certainly do that by geography and by company type and makes code, but it's more things like, the companies that really are worth lavishing pretty extensive sales and marketing resources on because they generate so much profitability for you. And perhaps less emphasis on a market that's not generating quite as much revenue, but has the potential to do that. And maybe even less attention, less marketing, less sales resources on people that buy from you rarely, small quantities, come around every now and again. And understanding who those people are enables you to target your resources, which are limited. Everybody has limited resources, even massive companies. Target those resources where you're going to get the most value.
Right.
That's the point of marketing and sales.
Right.
Right. So
you know where to spend your time, and
You know where to
what
spend
your
your time.
output can be.
You know where to send your marketing. You know where to send your sales team. And your sales team is your most expensive asset that you have in terms of sales marketing resources. That's human capital. Where are you going to spend that, right, Bob?
And you can look at different channels then.
Yeah.
You know, so you have other alternatives rather than just a sales team.
Right.
This might be a size of the group that's great for we're dropping them, you know, email or mail literature, expect them to raise their hand before we're talking to them.
Right.
Rather than really, you know, let's focus heavy on that.
It also enables you to tee up your sales team for success. You know, if you're sending out email blasts or you're sending out content marketing, white papers, whatever, and a prospect clicks on that, looks at that, is interested in that, maybe raises their hand and says, I want to know more information. Passing that information along, fully compiled the right data to the salesperson right when that person's raised their hand and said, I'm interested, is going to create the opportunity for a sale.
Sure.
So having a CRM system enables you to track that prospect or customer's behavior and then feed that information directly to the sales team. So the sales team is ready to make the call. They know that something has happened and they're interested, that somebody's interested in learning more. It just tees them up for success, and that's what a CRM system enables you to do.
How might an organization know if somebody is a marketing lead and when they graduate to a sales lead? So you're not doing that too early. You're not passing that torch too soon and turn the prospect off.
Good question. I think most of the time, if you're generating leads, if you've got people who have expressed interest of some kind, you've met them at a trade show, they've responded to something on your website, they've requested a white paper, they've had some interaction with your sales team at some point. If they've expressed any kind of interest, I think you begin to sort of probe and set up things and see how they behave. If they respond to that, then I think you've got a little bit more engagement happening, and you kind of measure it by engagement. If they really say, listen, I don't really want to hear from you guys very often, don't bug me, you sort of park them in a space where maybe they hear from you a few times a year, but they don't hear from you all the time. But I think if you follow the engagement, you track their behavior, and as they show more interest and they clearly have defined that they have a need, because hopefully you've learned that through the process of getting to know them a little bit, and maybe you ask the right qualifying questions in some of those early interactions, then it's time to get a salesperson a little bit more involved. So it's you sort of, I think, let the customer guide it, but you're ready at each stage of the customer's action to take the next step.
Yeah, there's very much a handful of criteria that makes a lead marketing qualified before you pass it on to sales. Because the things that salespeople object to is getting leads that they consider not qualified, and then there's a whole another workshop on that subject.
Yes.
But the issue is there that if marketing is looking at these are fitting our criteria, they're fitting what our customer segment that we're trying to target. They've taken these certain kind of actions. Now it's worthy to pass it on to sales and expect some action from them. The biggest gap often is not knowing if that expectation has been achieved.
Right.
In terms of sales has actually done something with them.
Right.
And if you've done the proper analysis up front and you've looked at your best customers, you've profiled that top 10 or 20% of your customers, they have the following characteristics, and then you've got a lead that shares those same characteristics, time to set up the sales.
I really love the way that you brought up that marketing can help to kind of cue things up for sales, and sales is already prepared and ready for that because they were probably involved from the very onset of understanding those different profiles of the right customer, the right attributes and stuff like that.
Right.
But also they are getting the lead handed to them at the most opportunistic time, so they're not a day late, $1 short, or too early, to actually invite them to that sales conversation. Exactly. I think that's a really important topic that you just hit on. So one of the things that in my conversations with colleagues and friends that's come up is CRM is something that is great for bigger businesses. How does it work for small businesses? And I think that's a stumbling point that a lot of organizations have. How would you answer that question? How can CRM help a smaller to mid-sized business in the way that it also can for a larger corporate business?
Where it fits the best is organizations that need to maintain the relationship with the customer. It's not a good transactional tool. I mean, if you're selling something that's a one-off transaction kind of activity, you're not trying to maintain a relationship. But even in a small organization, retaining customers is often more important than finding new ones for them.
Absolutely.
And if they're not talking to them, somebody else is. So the idea of being able to have, who's our customer base? How often are we touching them? What's the rhythm that we want to be touching our key customers versus maybe everybody else? And what are the instances of issues that are coming up with customers that we make sure we're making the account reps aware of, so they're not walking in blindly into issues on items. The worst wasting of time that I see in a lot of organizations is where when a sales rep now has to go into an organization and they have to call everybody in the organization to find out who talked to this client last.
Right.
What are the open issues?
It's another fire drill right there.
It's another fire drill. Let's go look at the accounting system and see what they purchased last. Let's go talk customer service and see what issues have come up with them last. That all needs to go away. You have that information at your fingertips in one place, and you're even getting alerts that now there's an issue, I should get back in there. So that can happen in any size organization.
Sure.
So it's very valuable for a small organization in that regard.
So it's making the organization aware of patterns and aware of what's happening maybe when they're not in the conversation directly.
Absolutely.
It's allowing you to use data more effectively.
I think it's actually even more important for smaller organizations than, it's important for every organization. We firmly believe that. That's sort of why we get up in the morning. But we really think that for smaller organizations, especially ones that have a limited sales team, limited dollars for marketing, the more you know and the better you can target, the limited resources that you have, the more effective you're going to be in making your business bigger. So if you have any kind of sales resources, any kind of marketing resources, and you're trying to grow your business, it's essential to understand who you're trying to sell to.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
essential. And so the smaller organizations actually need to use CRM effectively even more than the bigger ones do. The bigger ones can afford to make a mistake, the smaller ones can't.
Well, yeah, and often in smaller organizations, your lead salesperson is the president of the organization.
Absolutely. See that all the time.
And they don't have time.
They don't have time.
Just
No.
to really know what's going on everywhere
Right.
in the organization.
Right.
And so how do you pull that in one place?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So data is going to continue to be important, as important if not more.
I think so. And I think also, customers expect it now. Customers expect that you will know who they are. They will expect that you'll know when you call them what your last transaction was. That they'll know that you'll know what they bought last time, how often they buy from you, where they're located, what kind of business they have. They expect that you'll know that. I think Amazon has raised the bar so high for that kind of data-driven interaction where you assume that the marketer knows you well, and if they don't, you're mad about it.
Yes.
You're kind of like, don't you know I just bought from you guys 2 months ago? How come you don't know that? I'm calling to get an extra part for the thing I bought in April. Don't you know that? And if you don't know that, you're seriously going to disappoint people, and they're going to look elsewhere for someone who does know that.
Well, they're often calling in, send me what you sold me last time.
Exactly. I just did that.
You know.
I bought my husband a pair of pants I bought him previously. I called him up and said, I want the same pair of pants. Just ordered the same
And
one.
they gotta know that.
And they knew what it was. The right size, the right model number, everything. But the expectation has been raised now, I think, in terms of the customer experience, where the customer expects that you have the data to drive a very rich and engaging experience that makes their life easy. And if you don't do that with good data, then you're going to lose them.
And the biggest thing I see is that I'm also seeing account managers, new account managers going in organizations are expecting it to exist too.
Absolutely.
And part of that evolves from in terms of just having the information available.
Yep.
And just knowing what's happened in the past and being able to share that.
Well, that was one of the things that when Bob and I wrote the white paper about this topic, one of the things he really wanted to drill home was this idea of one view, one truth of the customer. What kind of happens sometimes in organizations is you have 5 different people across the organization who have information on a specific customer.
Sure.
Somebody has this kind of data in their Outlook, somebody has this kind of data in the ERP system. It's kind of all over the place, and there's no one single spot that has the real true picture of the customer's needs and the customer's interaction with you. You don't really have that anywhere. If you don't, then when you do try to reach out to the customer, you're at risk of not knowing what the customer knows because they interacted with you last. Right, Bob?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You'll learn a lot of things. You'll understand the importance of CRM system. You'll understand how to use your CRM system effectively when you have limited resources for marketing and for sales. You'll understand how to use your CRM system to gauge the value of a customer and therefore use that information to guide how you're doing your marketing. You'll understand some of the important rules and protocols of a CRM system, the importance of data integrity, the importance of having specific rules set up in terms of how data is entered, how data is managed, who should manage data within the organization. That's a key
That's a big
factor
one.
that we'll be talking about. data management within the organization. There's a lot of debate about that sometimes, and different silos want control of that. IT wants control of that. Marketing wants control of that. Who should really run that? And so we will delve into that as well. And I think we're basically just going to go through some of the best practices that we see in helping people set up CRM systems and use those systems for marketing. We see some mistakes people make from time to time. We're going to review some of those common mistakes and how to avoid those. But mostly it's about best practices, what we see people using CRM for to do more effective marketing.
I think that's good. And it's funny, I'm seeing right now 60% of my business is really relaunching systems
Right.
that have already been in place for a number of years. And it's interesting, I think that pulls out some of the best practices of where people have dropped off,
Right.
that they've stopped doing.
Right.
It's fantastic. Well, we are very much looking forward to having you lead the workshop in just a few more weeks and learning all about it. Where can we, in the meantime, learn about you and each of your companies?
You can learn about me by checking my website, and I'll spell it because it's a difficult name. It's Gianfagna Marketing, G-I-A-N, F as in Frank, A-G-N-A, and then the word marketing.com.
And it rhymes with lasagna.
Gianfagna rhymes with lasagna.
Love it.
Super. Yeah, our website would be the best source too for that. That or our LinkedIn pages where we have articles and information like that, and blog posts. But the InfoGrow website is infogrowcorp.com. And so you'll find our information there.
Beautiful. Well, Jean and Bob, I just want to thank you so much for coming to spend a little bit of time with us and educate us on data-driven marketing and sales, CRM, and we're really looking forward to learning more in a few more weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.